All right, so today these notes are notes number 4 because our math workshop that we received today was number 3, and we'll continue working on that this week. And then today we're going to do notes number 4. These notes are called recap and absolute value. So what does the word recap mean when it says recap? Review, exactly. So we're just going to go over some information that we've already discussed on the left side of the paper, and then when we get over to the right, that's where we're going to have our new notes on absolute value. First thing, starting off with, says, what is an integer? So we've talked about integers already. We defined it on last week on Thursday. What's an integer, Cameron?
A positive number or a negative number.
A positive or negative whole number. What is important? So it's a positive or negative whole number, but we got one more thing. What else we got to add in there? Okay? Including 0. Because what's special about 0? Yeah, it's in the middle of the positive and negatives, and we'll get to that in just a moment. Including 0. So positive or negative whole number, including 0. What is the main difference between positive and negative numbers? So when we're thinking about this, I want you to think about on a number line. On a number line, what's the difference between 2 and negative 2? What's the difference there? Taylor?
Negative 2 is under 0.
Okay. Okay, so negative 2 is going to be under the 0. A positive 2 is going to be over the 0. So what does that mean directionally on the number line? Okay. So the main difference between positive and negative numbers, they are on opposite sides of 0. Do y'all agree with that? So the main difference between negative and positive numbers, or positive and negative numbers, is they're on opposite sides of 0. And that's going to become important when we talk about finding the opposite of a number in just a moment. Okay. Number 3, is 0 positive or negative? Raise your hand. Positive or negative? Kaylee? Neither. It's not positive or negative. It's neither. It is not positive or negative. 0 is just neutral. All right. How can you tell if a number is positive or negative just by looking at it? Cole?
It would have a subtracting sign.
Okay, what numbers have the minus sign with it?
Negative.
Negative. So we know it's a negative number. Negative numbers have a minus sign in front, or a negative sign, if you want to call it that. Have a minus sign or a negative sign in front. What about a positive number? How do I know it's a positive number? Yeah. Positive numbers have a plus sign or no sign. Which one do we prefer? No sign. We prefer just writing no sign. Because a positive number, those are those numbers that you first learned to count with. Right? When you were learning to count, did you learn to say plus 1, plus 2, plus 3? No, just 1, 2, and 3. So we want to make sure we're not going to write in a plus sign. If you ever see it with a plus sign in front, sometimes they might write it like that in a textbook or on a worksheet. But we're not going to write that in our final answer because it's not necessary. Okay. Number 5, give an example of a word that might describe a situation in which a negative number would be used. So these are like those key words when you're reading a sentence and we're just wanting to write an integer. What are some key words that you might see and go, oh, I'm going to write a negative number here? What are some keywords we might see? Katie? Withdrawal. So that's one we just talked about. Withdrawal. So that means that you're taking money out of your account. Kate just said take away. So if someone takes away something, that would be a negative. Brendan? Subtract. Gabriella? I like that one. Subtract. Below is what she said. Having trouble spelling today for some reason. Cameron? Difference. Okay, so that would be more, that difference is more the operation of subtracting, so we're not going to write that one in. Give. Okay, so like if you're giving something away. Loss. Okay, some of the other ones that we came up with last period, we also got behind. Spent. Sub-zero was one that they came up with. We saw that on one of our homeworks. Distribute was another one that they came up with that we had seen on a homework. Remember, what does distribute mean you're doing? Like when that person distributed cupcakes, you're giving them away, passing them out. Okay? All right, I think that's a really good list. That's a lot of words that we just listed out. Let's talk about positive now. What are some words that you might see for positives? Brandon? Deposit. So instead of withdrawal, deposit is the opposite. That means you're putting money in. Gabrielle? Above. Okay, so we can kind of look at some of these that we had up here. The opposite of to lose something is to gain. The opposite of behind is, well, we could do it. We already got above. Behind would be in front, right? The opposite of being behind someone is being in front of it. The opposite of spending is saving. So if you save some money. Another word that they came up with that we saw and we talked about. What you got? What? Whenever we see the word like sub in front of something, that makes us think below it or under it. So that would actually go with the negative. That's why we have the sub-zero there. Brandon? Receive. I like that one. What about collect? The other one that they got was yield. Remember we had talked about like when a company yields a profit or the garden yielded 26 tomatoes. That means that it created or we collected that amount. So yield would be a positive. Okay. All right, I think that's good. All right, so let's move down to these next ones, guys. These are just positive number or negative number. Tell me what to write for each of these. For A, 28 degrees below 0. What am I going to write there? Cameron?
Negative 28.
Very good. Winning, $125. Faith? 125. We're not putting the dollar sign. We're not putting a plus sign. Just 125. It's a positive number automatically. What about C? Gaining 5 yards in football. Sarah Grace? Withdrawing $750. Gabriella? Negative 750. Okay. All right, questions about this first examples? This is repeating what we did last Thursday, last Friday. See it again now. Okay, so for example 2, we're graphing these set of integers on a number line. So the first thing we're going to do is draw out our tick marks. And guys, those numbers are pretty far apart. We're going all the way from a negative up to a positive, so you want to make sure you got enough marks on there. Okay. Anything looking? What's the smallest number on that first example, A on example 2? What's my smallest number there? Cameron. All right, so 2 is really small, but that's not actually the smallest. Brandon? -3. So that -3 is going to be the smallest number because it's the biggest negative. So we're going to start our number line with -3. All right, now guys, we're trying to get to the positive. So as I get closer to 0, what's going to come next? We can't skip over to -1. All right, remember, on our number line, they got to be spaced evenly. Stina? -2. Then we can have -1. Then we have 0. So guys, was I able to just put these numbers on the number line? Now this goes into what we were practicing on Friday. We've got to have all the numbers in between. So after 0, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Since I have that extra mark, do I still need to number it? Yes, so we still want to put a 6 there. All right, and now I can put points where all those numbers go. So I have a +5, so I'm going to put a dot. I'm going to put a point on 5 on the number line. I have -3, so I'm going to put a dot on -3 on the number line. -1, and then a +2. All right, I'm going to give you a minute to try to set up B on your own. So first make sure you're putting those space marks on there, equally spaced apart. I'm going to give you a moment to try this one on your own. Make sure we're numbering the number line first. Choose the smallest number for your starting point. Okay, so what number do I need to start this number line with? Okay. -7 is the biggest negative, which means it's my smallest number, so -7. And then we're trying to get to the positive, so we're trying to get closer to 0. So what's going to be next, Dina?
-6.
Very good. And after -6, Adriana? Very good, -5. And then Lyric?
-4.
And then let's just finish numbering that in. -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That was really close. Okay. If you ran out of room, just draw your number line longer. You can extend your number line further if you need to. Okay, so if I needed to draw my number line further, I could just make that line go longer. All right, so let's put our points on there. -7 needs a dot. +4, so make sure you're going to the right of 0 to do your 4. 0, -2, and -6. Okay. Now on your homework, the good news is, guys, you're not going to have to draw out these number lines ever again. On your homework, what it's going to ask you to do is just put those numbers in order from least to greatest. So what order would those numbers go in if I was going to write them in order from least to greatest? What order would that go in? What do you think, Kernan? Least to greatest, what would I write?
-7, -6, -2, 0, 4.
All right, and do you see how the number line does actually help me with that? Because then I can just look at the dots and write those numbers down. Do you have to draw number lines to do that? No, but picturing one in your head might be beneficial. Okay, if you want to draw a number line, if that helps you, draw it out. Okay. All right, the next thing we're going to mention, opposite numbers. Opposite numbers are numbers with different signs, but the same digit. Okay. They're numbers with different signs but the same digit. Because our goal for an opposite number is they're the same distance from 0. So, for example, if I look at this number line over here to the right on the board, if I have the number 3, how many spaces from 0 is that? 1, 2, 3 spaces, right? So I need the opposite number, which is going to be the same distance from 0. What's that going to be? A negative 3. Are those still the same number, 3 and 3? But they have different signs. One's positive, one is negative. So can someone give me a different example of two opposite numbers? Okay. Negative 10 and positive 10, which would be negative 10 and 10. Anyone got another example? Cameron? Negative 5 and 5. We could also write that 5 and negative 5. So those would be opposite numbers. Okay, the reason that these are important is we're fixing to move into something called absolute value. All right, we defined absolute value last Thursday. Does anyone remember what it is? Cameron?
The distance any integer is from 0. The distance is always measured in a non-negative number.
The distance an integer is from 0. All right, the distance an integer is from 0. Now, the next thing that we wrote in that definition that Kimberly read is really important. The next thing she said is distance is always measured in a positive. So why is the absolute value of a number never negative? Because we're measuring distance. Okay, so because it measures distance, so it must be positive. Right? Because we're measuring distance. Again, that goes back to like we talked about, a ruler, a tape measure, all of those things that would measure a distance are always going to have positive numbers on them. You're not going to find rulers and tape measures with negatives. All right? Because when you measure an amount, it's going to be measured as a positive. All right? So like even if I'm digging a hole that's 2 feet deep, if I tell you how far to dig the hole, I'm going to give you a positive number. Dig the hole 2 feet. If I wanted to represent that with an integer, I would put negative 2 because it went down. But when I actually give you the measurement, do I give you a negative? No. If I need a number to represent that whole situation, we would say negative. But for the actual measurement in the sentence, it gives you the positive number. Okay? All right, so absolute value are these little bars that we have here. All right, so these little bars right here are called absolute value bars. So the absolute value of a positive 2. How far away from 0 is positive 2? Okay? 2 spaces. Do y'all agree that 2 is 2 spaces from 0? So the absolute value of 2 is 2. All right, so if I'm taking the absolute value of a positive number, it's just a positive number. What's the absolute value of a negative 4? How far is negative 4 from 0, Brandon? 4 spaces. So the absolute value of a negative number is a positive, because again, absolute value must always be positive. So even if it's the absolute value of a positive number, that's 2 spaces. Absolute value of a negative number, 4 spaces. How far is 0 from 0? 0 spaces. Okay. Now when you're doing math with absolute value, you kind of treat it like parentheses. So the order of operations, PEMDAS, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, starts with parentheses. It's a grouping symbol. My absolute value bars kind of group themselves as well. So like right here, if I look at my grouping symbols, what's in this absolute value? So we've got to do that first. So I do want you to write this step, especially on your notes. So what is the absolute value of a negative 9? A positive 9. Guys, once I take the absolute value, those bars are gone. What's the absolute value of 3? 3. Now that just says 9 plus 3. Can I add 9 plus 3? Absolutely. Could I have added them when they were in those absolute value bars? No, because those bars were blocking them. It's like they were stuck in jail. Well, now that I've let them out of that jail, now can I add them? So 9 plus 3 is 12. So that would be our answer. So you got to let them out of jail before you can add them. So same thing here. Negative 8 is in jail. When I let it out of jail, what does it become?
8.
Positive 8. All right. We have that minus sign. Is that minus sign in jail right there? The one in between? No. So it just comes down. Negative 2, when I let it out of jail, what does it become? 2. All right. And then now I have 8 minus 2, which is 6. So once I let them out of those bars, we can do the operation. Yes?
What's like the next one? You just like combine it from 12 to 7?
Yeah, so if I look at the next one, 12 and 7, they're together already, aren't they? So it's like they're in the same cell block, if you will. So they're together. So that means, can I go ahead and do those? Yeah. So 12 and 7. 12 minus 7 is 5. Now here's a question, guys. Have I let 12 and 7 out yet? No. So that 5 is still in the bars. Now that I just have one number, now can I let it out? Yeah, so now, what's the absolute value of 5? 5. Now, I know that seems like a little silly, but the reason is, right now, can y'all add and subtract and get negative numbers? Have we learned how to do that? No. We are going to later this year, like at the very end, we'll go over integer rules for adding and subtracting. But for right now, we can't do 7 minus 12 and get a negative 5. All right? So we have to do a positive 5, but it's important that we have those bars because eventually, guys, you will get a negative number that you have to take the absolute value of. It doesn't seem like anything is happening in this step. I want you to be aware later on this could be a negative. And then would it change? Yes. So keep the bars there until you're ready to take the single number out by itself. Okay? All right. G. G looks a little tricky. Right? Y'all see where my absolute value is, right? What is the absolute value of that negative 5? Positive 5, right? But there is a negative sign. Now that negative sign, this negative sign right here, was it in the absolute value bars? So you just bring it down and it stays the same. So what is my answer here? Negative 5. We took the absolute value, but the minus that was on the outside stayed. So technically when you're doing absolute value, you can get a negative as your answer as long as it's in front of the bars. Okay, one last thing that I want us to be able to do. All right, I want you to be able to evaluate. Evaluate if A equals negative 2 and B equals 3. Oh, sorry. There we go. Evaluate if A equals negative 2 and B equals 3. All right, our first problem that we're going to do like this, the absolute value of B plus the absolute value of A. Absolute value of B plus the absolute value of A. If you just see it like that, with the absolute value of B and the absolute value of A, to do with that? No, I don't, okay, A and B, I can't do math with letters yet. All right, we can't do that, but what does it tell me here? A equals negative 2, and what does it tell me here? B equals negative 3. So really, I wrote this letter, but what does that letter equal? 3. So guys, all a letter does, it's called a variable because it's holding the place for a number. Has anyone ever held a place for their friend in line? Anyone ever done that? That's all that's held a seat. Same thing, that's all that's happening here. B is holding the spot in line for that 3. So instead of writing a B when I do the math, I'm going to write a 3. And then what's going to go where A is?
2.
A negative 2. Make sure you keep that. So now, before I can add them, what do I have to do? Take them out of those bars. Take them out of jail. So what's the absolute value of a positive 3? A positive 3, still 3. Very good. I thought I might have tricked y'all and y'all said negative, but you didn't. All right, absolute value of a negative 2. 2. And then what's 3 plus 2? 5. All right. So on your homework tonight, there's going to be some problems like this. In fact, it gives you an A, B, and a C. If it gives you the letter, look up in the directions to find what number to replace it with. Okay, are there any questions about this? right, so let's get our homework out and let's get started on that.